Good morning, everybody. John Spielke here from GAI Insights with the Gen AI news briefing, rating your top news, essential, important, or optional. Today we have an elite crew of Ankaj, Adam, and Paul. So we've got some interesting things going on. We have news, everything from a number of things coming out of Google as they work hard in the AI race through some interesting new case studies from folks, including Goldman Sachs. So with that, Ankash, can you get us to the first article, please?
Sure, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from Goldman Sachs, and it talks about how they have deployed their first Gen AI tool across the firm.
All right, Adam, what do you think here? The CIO of Goldman going at it.
I'm on the fence, honestly, between optional and important. I think there's some interesting things to extract from this. First of all, the one tool they've deployed is Microsoft's Copilot, so that's not really earth-shattering. There are some good insights that potentially could be taken away in terms of the approach they've taken, the slow, measured approach, pulling everything internally, centralizing everything. So I could see an argument for important. The one thing I think that I did see in there, which is worth mentioning, and we'll get to it a little later with some other news, is that they aren't locked into a single model, right? They're using GPT-3.5, GPT-4, Google's Gemini, as well as Meta's Llama, right? So we're later on we're going to talk more about these compound AI systems, and I see how Goldman is setting themselves up for having the flexibility to really choose the model that's right for the task at hand. And so there are probably some lessons to take away from this. I'm just not sure that there's enough meat on these bones to warrant giving it an important rating.
All right, I landed in very much the same place. Paul, what do you think? You going to push this into important, or we're going to go optional?
Yeah, I mean, I had it important just because it's in the Wall Street Journal. If I'm trying to get budget as a AI leader, this is another proof point that this is becoming mainstream, even for regulated, very sophisticated companies here. So I think it strengthens a case that it's mainstream. I think 3 is that also strengthens this notion that yes, there are a lot of issues internally here. We do need to be cautious, but you can get through them, rather than some of these companies which kind of just say, oh my gosh, we have to think through all this bias and security stuff and installs a project here. So for those reasons, I had it as important.
All right. At the risk of future mob rule, we're going to go Democratic here and go for important. All right. Ankash, important. Next, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Meta. So Meta has launched a large language model compiler.
Paul, what do you think here?
I think this is exciting for some of the software stuff, but I had it optional. I mean, it's in the vein of things that's getting better and better and better and better, and Meta continue to really push the envelope on the open source side. But I rated it optional.
Adam, what do you think?
The same. I think it's interesting. It's going after the efficiency of the code rather than just helping to write the code, which
Yes.
I think makes a lot of sense. But it is research, so I had it as optional as well.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, if you look at, this notion of large language model compilers, I mean, it seemed like the data, in terms of the ability to do, was it 40+% on a round trip and 14% on an exact code match, and across the two dominant, architectures, right? The 86 architecture and the ARM architecture. I mean, that's the vast majority of PCs and mobile devices between those two things. And be able to, and to get the, virtual machine abstraction layer across those pretty, handily. I thought, I don't know, I hear you about optional. I was leaning toward important just because, running these models, building these models and building the code is so important. And, there's the thing that opens up for me is that if you can do this kind of does it help in the refactoring of so much software that's out there, put intelligence into it, you know what I mean? And so that's what struck me, is because I think that's the big the massive gold mine after new software development. I think it's the refactoring and the reimagination of existing software, you know what I mean? And so that's putting intelligence, if you will, into old software. So that's why I was leaning toward important. Did I convince either of you? If I can get one of you over the fence, I will rate this important.
You know, if they were announcing that this was available, you would probably have me convinced.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's like, as far as I can tell, they're just saying, look, we've done it.
Right.
Okay. You know what it's a nice concept, but what good does it really do us right now?
Yeah, it's an impressive paper too. Okay.
But
Option
before you go on, John, I do want to highlight, and you and I traded emails on that nice video from the CEO of NVIDIA, who's talking about AI is essential for how they design and ship chips. They could not actually produce chips without AI exploring all the other spaces and helping them with QA. And I think this is a step towards that with general software production here. And it's really, really exciting on terms of the overall efficiency of the software factory that this is headed towards.
Got you. Awesome. So we're going to go optional here, but a very important area to watch. Next, Ankash.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI. So they have developed a new GPT-4 model called Critic GPT, which will help human trainers spot mistakes during RLHF.
Okay. Would one of you guys mind taking this? I just missed this in my review of the things. I assigned it to myself, and then
Yeah, there were two articles, both in the same link there. I'll jump in. Look,
Adam, before you go there, he signed it to himself, but he's too busy getting a big piece of chalk that he forgot to read it.
Hey, quick, and what's the old adage? Quick, if there's a mistake, quick, fix the blame. Yeah. No. All right, Adam, if you could help us
Sorry,
out
Adam.
Adam, you were
yeah,
saying?
no worries. I'm trying to scan the article quickly. I'm trying to remember RLHF. That's like something with human feedback, right? What's
Right.
reinforcement learning
feedback,
from human
which
feedback,
is the critical
right?
thing that got him over the 3.5 effectiveness.
Right. So this is really interesting. Basically, they're using GPT to help the humans find out what's wrong with GPT, and it's an essential step in improving these things. And it's a good model of how you keep the human in the loop, but still use the AI even in that process to make the human more effective. But I think it's debatably optional news in itself. So,
Paul,
you know, I've been reading up more on what Alden's doing with custom GPT and some of the engineering behind that, and they're kind of doing this sort of stuff at all of the different components of the pipeline. So it's important to understand that there's a place for the AI in really partnership with the human at all the various touch points within the full round trip, you know, to the model on the back end and back.
Yeah.
But this is really just one place in that where OpenAI is starting to eat their own dog food.
And I think part of it, we're just going through. I mean, I think the reality is that the industry is starting to realize that there are these AI robots everywhere. So on the surgery table, when we're building a product, there's 6 or 8 or 10 robots in there. And then working on the surgery are humans and robots. So robots are every team. There are multiple components of every product here, and that's the new reality.
All right, so we're going to rate this one as optional in terms of a new assisting robot to help in the review process. Okay, there's a second article in there. That's the thing I screwed up. Time and OpenAI.
Yes, John. So Time and OpenAI, they have announced a strategic content partnership.
Yeah, I was on the fence here in terms of important. The big we had Paul with Barney there, so that's Barney, essential Barney. I don't think so, right? I think
No, it's
I just thought it was important in terms of name brand coming in and getting with OpenAI, the clearly most effective thief in the market. When it comes to content, has now made a deal with the folks that they're taking from. So I don't know, but I could go with optional. I think there's not much. It's a very short article. It's an indicator of where we're headed in terms of licensing. So, but what did you guys think? Paul, you Barney,
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen. I mean, obviously, OpenAI is cutting partnership deals. We saw the one with Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago. I know there's a handful of others out there. They had a $60 million deal with Reddit. So clearly, everyone knows you've got to get more sources of content than the public stuff out there. OpenAI is a big dog out there, so they're running around trying to lock up, exclusive deals, and publishers know that they're really getting jammed up. And we saw the public fight between Forbes and Perplexity a few weeks ago, and it's a whole new world. And the publishers have no leverage, and they're losing leverage. So I think it's one of 4 stories, and we're going to see 50 more of them like that in the next 12 months.
Adam, you go with optional?
I'll say optional. I'll say though, between this and what we'll get to later with what Google is doing. What I'm starting to pick up on, though, I was very much under the impression these deals were around these companies getting more data for training future models. And more what I'm waking up to is that there's training models, there's fine-tuning models, and there's grounding models. And it's important to understand all 3 of these concepts. It's important to understand where grounding the information from these models in these additional data sources really helps reduce hallucinations and ensure that they're getting the right answers. And I think that might be more of what this play is for OpenAI with Time Magazine, is really getting all of this additional data to make sure that their models are giving the right answers, than that they're going to be training future models and locking up that data for that purpose. So I'm going to give this an optional, but I think I'll probably give the one later on an important, because it focuses a little more specifically on the grounding your data.
Yeah, so interesting. It reminds me of the early days of quality in manufacturing, which was the term of art was that quality is inspected in. So this is kind of inspecting in quality at the end of the production line. My guess is over time with with compound models and multiple experts and so forth, we're going to build quality in to the interaction, but it won't all be LLMs, right? It'll be any number of models that will be done. But right now we're as you say, grounding is kind of at least to me is like inspecting quality at the end of the production line, which is fine, better than no quality inspection at all. All right, so we're gonna give this baby the big O headed for an I on something nearby. It's first cousin. All right.
Okay, the next one comes from Tech Target. It talks about how UW Health's nurses are using their new generative AI tool.
All right, Adam. Barney or brilliance?
Back to me again, huh? Are those my choices? It's not EIO anymore. It's Barney or brilliant. Yeah, look, I'm going to give this an optional. I mean, it's basically a single use case, and it's probably the most basic use case, which is helping it write responses to people. It's great that they're doing it. It's important work, especially for nurses and frontline workers, to help alleviate that load is vital. But this is just another example of that important use case.
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, optional.
Optional. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I also have it as optional. Fascinating that they're using it as a way to help them with the massive nursing shortage and nurse turnover, which is very, very acute. And anybody understands healthcare delivery in the United States. This nursing issue is not going away. COVID massively increased the cost of nurses. In my opinion, got them paid close to paid what they should be getting paid, but that's another whole conversation. By the way, did you know that the doctors, when they're putting diagnostic related groups in, how things get paid, they purposely fought against nurse activities having procedure codes so they couldn't get charged directly. So they continue to be, kind of fungible labor, whereas the doctors get paid by procedure.
John, you're not suggesting that the healthcare system's optimizing profits and exploiting labor, are you? Instead of working on clinical outcomes.
I would never say that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. we don't have a healthcare system. We have a healthcare reimbursement system. Anyway,
moving right along.
All right. Akash, put this as a big O, and next.
Okay. So the next one comes from Basten. So they have introduced a new functionality called Basten Chains, which is a new framework and SDK designed for developing workflows using multiple models and components.
Yeah. What'd you think here, Paul?
Yeah, interesting new development. It's optional for the AI leader who's driving value. It's speed and feeds and efficiency thing that we're seeing every vector on this whole industry. Very promising, interesting, but optional.
What do you think, Gavin?
Yeah, specifically this announcement again is optional, and I'll just reiterate, we see it again right there underlined, compound AI systems, right? Paul, you were just talking about them the other day, and that it's coming up more and more, and it's something that I think our AI leaders do need to be tapping into, about not being locked into a single model, having the flexibility in your workflows and pipelines to really be able to pull from multiple sources, use different best practices. And so they're obviously leveraging this, and Base 10 is trying to get out in front of it. This news itself is probably optional, but compound AI systems are definitely an important concept to tap into. You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah, if people aren't aware, the compound AI system is from the Bayer Group out of Berkeley. I think it's a very clumsy category term, but we're now hearing it for 4 or 5 different vendors, and this is yet another chart to start talking about that as a category.
Yeah, I was on the fence on this one because I think that what's interesting is it reminds me of the early days of operating systems, because they're defining new function and capability and the interdependencies, like, does it sit in the background as state that gets published, or is it a sequence of activities? The kind of stuff that they worried about in the early OSs. And, here, being able to break stuff down in terms of, the timing and the kind of compute necessary so that you drive efficiency of the hardware. We're back there, right? That kind of went away for a while, except in the very large data centers. So I think it's fascinating. To me, it's kind of the evolution of this, what's the OS going to be like? What's the semantic OS going to be, right? And what role is this going to play within it? And the numbers are pretty impressive, which put me close to important, but it's Friday. We're going to give it an option. All right, next on Coach.
Okay. So the next 3 articles, they come from Google DeepMind or Google Cloud, and they talk about different models which were announced in May, but now are available to all the developers to experiment with. So one of them is Gemini 1.5 Pro with 2 million context window, then 2 of the Gamma models, one 9 billion model and another 27 billion model that are available as well. Then we also have the Codestral model from Mistral available on Google Vertex.ai.
All right, Adam, a flurry of new announcements from our friends at Google. What do you think?
I probably the thing that's most interesting about all of this is probably what's least highlighted, which is the context caching, right? Which enables you to send some information to the backend model with a bunch of tokens, especially when you're talking about 2 million tokens in context. You don't want to be spending the money to keep sending those 2 million tokens back every time, right? And they've enabled a feature where you can send tokens back, and by default they'll have a 1-hour time to live, where they can just sit on the back end and you can still reference them without having to pass them again and again. And I think that's going to really increase efficiency from a cost saving perspective, and probably gets a little less press than some of these other things that are in the news here. Overall, it's borderline for me between optional and important. Maybe as a suite of features, it's important for people to realize what Google's bringing to the game. But generally, these all seem like fairly incremental changes to me.
Paul, what do you say?
Yeah, optional.
Optional? Yeah, I thought it was fascinating when you start to look at the the pricing structure and so forth, and then some of the applications, like looking at, hey, I want to ask different questions of video, or hey, I've got a series of interactions with a customer and I want relevant context, right? And I don't want to be paying for input tokens as well as output tokens, or I want to be paying a lot less as they sit there in memory for now, right? So it seems to be very practical in terms of the interaction support. You know what I mean?
I mean, just as a footnote, it's breathtaking, though, Adam and John, the size of these windows. I mean, what's this? What's it going to be like 2 years from now? It's just, real time, everything, robots everywhere, speed everywhere.
Well, that's what I mean. To me, that's what I mean about the analogy, the biological analogy. So much of the memory functionality and transformational capability as we have in our body here, like so much is hyper localized and distributed. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. You know what I mean? Right now, the power intensity is so great that and the decentralized expression, the decentralized intelligence is still kind of thin. The combination of those two things means it's compared to your body, it's way more centralized. You know what I mean? But over time, I think those things will be improved, and we'll have much more distributed intelligence, like we do in biologic systems, and self-organized intelligence. Anyway, yes, this context caching was impressive. Okay, well, I'm going to give it an optional, but man, I was very close to important in this, especially because, well, I mean, it's really close to the cost base of a bunch of, when we look at our wins work framework and we say, okay, what is going to hit first by generative AI? This pricing and structure and architecture supports those, what we think and what we're seeing in the marketplace. Early use cases, customer service, video, reconfiguration, code refactoring. These things are going to be highly impacted in terms of cost and function on the basis of these new things. So can I hear an important? Yes, I'm feeling very important. I just need one vote for important.
Adam, you know what he's going to say? He's going to say, "Thank you for everyone for voting." The answer is X. So,
I have to exercise my authoritarian muscles once today. Important. This is going important. Okay, Ankash, important it is.
Yeah. So another one from Google that we have is regarding its data partnerships with Thomson Reuters, Moody's, and other AI real-world data.
Yes. To be the CEO of Moody's, you completely missed the 2008 crash, and then you get legislated into being even more important. The rewarding of incompetence. Anyway, that's from the past. What do you think here, Paul?
Interesting, but optional. I mean, I think I'm not sure what the AI leader would necessarily do with this.
Okay. Yeah, actually, sorry, I got blindsided you there. I assigned it to myself. I had it as again on the fence. I was leaning toward important for the issue you were talking about before, Adam, which is the grounding. Right here we have another example of, okay, I'm going to ground the model somewhere. I'm going to go to Moody's, which obviously is an important data source. It's actually baked into a lot of legislation. If you're a fiduciary working for, CalPERS or something like that, you have to, Moody's and S&P are actually baked into, what you can and cannot invest in terms of investment grade, assets and so forth. So, I mean, this is very important grounding in terms of asset management and other, derivative functions. But where'd you come out on that?
I was on the fence as well. I think probably the thing that I took away, and it's probably less in this article and more in my reading up a little more about grounding and how it's different than training models and fine-tuning models, is that because I read a little bit and then I actually said to GPT, I said, so grounding is basically like fact checking.
Yeah.
And it said it's similar, except you need to understand that it's not that it gets the answer and then it checks the answer. It's drawing from this additional data to derive the answer. So it's sort of like pre-fact checking. It's using this information from these sources real time to help get the right answer in the first place, versus in a model that doesn't have access to that, where it's using either whatever it had in its training data from however long ago,
Right.
or what it was able to do because it went and did a web search right now. So to have those things dialed into the inference and have it real time pulling from these sources is going to be an important part of really getting good answers out of these models.
Mm-hmm.
But the partnership itself with Thomson Reuters is probably optional news.
All right, optional it is. Ankash, next.
So that was the last one, John.
Okay. We already did the Vertex AI Enterprise.
No,
Yes,
I think we can
covered-
probably pull that
covered.
out from the Gemini 1.5 and that sort of stuff. We can probably
Gotcha.
talk about it.
All righty. So let's see. Let's look at the big tote board.
Yeah, just coming up in a minute, John.
All right. So I think today we have not, had a Friday grade inflation. We have stayed strong in our evaluation and efficiency of our audience here. All right. So we have 2 importance, 4 optionals. Goldman Sachs, important in terms of helping you go get dough. Important. The authoritarian in me came out and said, yes, we're going to make this new thing, especially for ML ops, this new thing from Google in terms of their models and pricing and the ability to keep things in memory as an important thing. So not a lot of weekend reading. Paul, what's our Monday Learning Lab?
Yeah, so for our viewers on GAI Insights is the company, and each Monday we have we call a learning lab. It's a Zoom call. We do it every week. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern. As part of that, we have a showcase presentation. The showcase on Monday is on AI agents. This will be our second presentation, and Ray Hunter, a longtime attendee, is going over that. And the last one generated a lot of interest, and it's free for anybody. You can sign up at our meetup group.
Yes, and the other thing I just want to say is that we're getting a lot of traction for our October conference. So for the folks who are interested in that, we've got over 30 speakers lined up. We just had a fantastic new sponsor, Inflection AI, which is one of the large language models that's really pushing on a whole theme that we think is important around private AI, and which is, how do you control the cognitive and intellectual layer of your business, where a lot of the value added is. So we expect to see more there. We're delighted to have Inflection as a sponsor of that. And keep your minds about you. Watch out for those robots on the weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.